4 days after Joe Biden's disastrous performance at the presidential debate, there is somehow even more fallout as Biden himself now admits that he's senile.
I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth.
A slight correction there. Joe Biden does not, in fact, know how to tell the truth, as we learned when even CNN was forced to fact-check his many lies just last Thursday night.
He said he's the only president in a while who didn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world. Troops have, of course, died on his watch. He said he's put in a $15 per shot cap on insulin and Medicare. It's a $35 a month cap. He said it's a $200 cap on overall drug spending in Medicare. It's $2,000 a year. He said the border now has fewer crossings than when Trump was in office. That's generally not true. He said, or at least strongly suggested, unemployment was at 15% when he took office. It was actually 6.4. He said Trump wants to get rid of Social Security. Trump doesn't. He said billionaires pay 8.2% in taxes. It's much higher. He said Trump told Americans to inject bleach amid COVID. We know Trump made foolish comments about scientists studying disinfectant injection, but didn't frame it as advice to people. And Biden said the Border Patrol endorsed him. No, its union supported the border bill he supported, never endorsed him himself.
And it keeps going, actually. It goes on, but we got more important things to get to, like how Biden is now admitting he's senile. We have all known for some time that Biden has some form of dementia. When it became obvious in the lead up to the 2020 election, Democrats blamed his strange behaviors and failures of memory and inability to think anymore on a childhood stutter. Overnight, that became the official line of the liberal establishment. PBS made a whole documentary about Biden's supposed childhood stutter.
In the crisis of stuttering, a life method. Persevere. Just push through.
Highly recommend you watch the whole documentary. It is some grade A propaganda. Out of nowhere, none of us had ever heard of Biden's alleged stutter for the first 47 years of his political career, but that was the Democrat story, and they were sticking to it until now, when Biden himself has finally admitted that he can't walk, he can't talk, and he can't debate much anymore, specifically because he is old and senile and obviously unfit for office, much less a second term in office. And the craziest part of the whole thing is Joe Biden still has a better chance of beating Trump than anyone the Democrats can replace him with. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. We're all talking about Biden and whether the Democrats are going to replace him and will he step down as president. Meanwhile, in another branch of government, in the Supreme Court, the court just dealt a huge blow, potentially a death blow, to the administrative state, sometimes referred to as the deep state. One of the biggest Supreme Court decisions of my lifetime comes out on Friday, just after the show. And very few people are talking about it, but it's huge. It's something conservatives have been asking for 40 years. It's, I think, impossible for me to overstate how important this decision is. We'll get into it in one moment. First, though, I want to light up my candle. You know, we sold out of Sicilian Summer. Sorry, if you didn't get Sicilian Summer, that's my seasonal release. You're out of luck. I don't know what to tell you. Sorry, you gotta buy them faster next time. If you go to thecandleclub.com, you have to have the in there, thecandleclub.com. We might have it on the DailyWire site, but thecandleclub.com is the home of it. You can get my whole line of candles. This is the Old Soul candle. Smells like, I don't know, big puffy sweaters in New England or something. We've also got Wise Man. That is a riff on the Smells and Bells candle from Lent that also sold out. The Wise Man candle is still available. We've got the PSL candle. It's a little out of season, but it smells delicious. We've got a whole Mayflower line of candles. Those come in beautiful colored glass. Politically correct, we have to say glass of color. So go get them now, thecandleclub.com. The liberal establishment right now is begging Joe Biden to drop out. Not just according to reports, not just privately. This is publicly. The New York Times editorial page comes out. This is not just by some opinion writer, it's by the New York Times editorial board. Headline, to serve his country, President Biden should leave the race. No uncertain terms there. The Washington Post has come out. The Washington Post didn't go quite as far as the New York Times, but the Post said Biden should at least spend the weekend considering dropping out. Politico, another establishment outlet, has said that has observed that a ton of other liberal lackey establishment columnists, Paul Krugman, Tom Friedman, Nicholas Kristof, Jonathan Alter, David Ignatius, Joe Scarborough over on MSNBC, they have all called on Biden to drop out or to seriously consider dropping out. This is a full-scale assault. Immediately following Biden's debate performance, these guys believe that Biden cannot win, can't beat Trump. Don't forget, the point of that debate, the reason the debate was held so early, was because Biden continues to trail Trump in the polls. So Biden was the one who called for this debate. There were some conspiracy theories floating around that actually this was 5D chess, and the Democrats put Biden up to this debate because they knew he was failing and they wanted him to be exposed and they wanted their convention to be thrown into chaos so that they can replace him. I think it's all bogus. In part, the reason I think that theory is bogus is it was Biden who called for the debate. It wasn't the Democrat establishment. It wasn't the New York Times. It wasn't the Washington Post. It was the inner circle around Joe Biden called for that debate because they had to turn his poll numbers around. That was the point of it. And not only did the debate not turn his poll numbers around, it's going to sink his poll numbers even further. So all these guys, the Times, the Post, all the rest of them agree he cannot beat Trump. So what do people like Barack Obama, what do people like Bill and Hillary Clinton, what do the real poobahs of the Democratic Party, what are they saying? They're saying the opposite of the New York Times and the Washington Post. Obama came out and said, Joe's the nominee. He tweets out, quote, bad debate nights happen, trust me, I know, but this election is still a choice between someone who has fought for ordinary folks his entire life and someone who only cares about himself, between someone who tells the truth, who knows right from wrong and will give it to the American people straight, and someone who lies through his teeth for his own benefit. Last night didn't change that, and it's why so much is at stake in November. Now, I, of course, agree with Barack Obama entirely. That is the choice in this election. Obama might be misinterpreting which one is which, but this is Obama's way of saying, I'm sticking with Joe, he's the nominee. And he includes a link, joebiden.com. Bill Clinton, then. So you got Obama, who's Biden's old boss and the previous Democrat president. Now you got two Democrat presidents ago. Bill Clinton says, I'll leave the debate writings to the pundits, but here's what I know. I know a lot. Facts and history matter. Joe Biden has given us 3 years of solid leadership, steadying us after the pandemic, creating a record number of new jobs. It's going to hurt my voice to keep doing this. Blah, 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 blah. That's what's at stake. You got to vote for Biden. Not only Bill Clinton, but Hillary Clinton comes out and defends Joe Biden. I won't do a Hillary Clinton voice because I don't want to damage my microphone. She says, the choice in this election remains very simple. It's a choice between someone who cares about you, your rights, your prospects, your future, versus someone who's only in it for himself. So again, they all post basically the exact same tweet with the same kind of ambiguity. At least Hillary clears it up and says, I'll be voting Biden. Though she doesn't clear up the ambiguity. She just says, look, there's a good guy and a bad guy. There's a guy who cares about the people and a guy who only cares about himself, guys who tells the truth and a guy who lies. And then there's really no connection there that she says, I'll be voting for Biden. So a kind of hilarious diction from all three of them, but they all have the same message, vote for Biden. And the reason for this is they know that right now, there is no mechanism to get Biden out of the race other than Biden dropping out. So they're trying to suck up to Biden. Even if they really think he should drop out, they would still have to suck up to Biden. But I think it goes deeper. I think that Obama and the Clintons recognize something that a lot of the pundits who are hysterical and reactive and impetuous don't realize, which is there's nobody better among the Democrats. It's true. If the election were held today, Joe Biden would lose, and he would lose by a lot. But hey, New York Times, hey, Washington Post, hey, Joe Scarborough, hey, who are you going to replace him with? Now, speaking of desperation, sometimes people start to feel a little desperate when they get calls from those debt collectors. That's why you got to check out American Financing. Go to AmericanFinancing.net. Inflation is through the roof. Many Americans have no other choice but to put these expenses on credit cards, which obviously have very high interest rates. Instead of panicking, call American Financing today. If you are a homeowner, they're helping thousands of people in the same situation pay off that debt and break free from financial stress. Their salary-based mortgage consultants are saving homeowners an average of $854 a month. That's a big relief. Call today. You may delay 2 mortgage payments. American Financing, 866-721-3300. That is 866-721-3300. Or if you are more digitally and virtually inclined, you can go to AmericanFinancing.net. NMLS 182334, NMLSConsumerAccess.org, APR for rates in the 5 starting at 6.799% for well-qualified borrowers. Call 866-721-3300 for details about credit costs and terms. Who are they going to replace him with? Kamala Harris? No. Kamala loses to Trump. No one likes Kamala Harris. That's not going to work. Michelle Obama, this is the one you hear, even from the GOP pundits, the conservative pundits. They say, oh, Michelle could come in at the last minute and Michelle would destroy Trump. First of all, I don't think Michelle Obama wants to be president. She already had the advantages of being president. She got a kick out of it, but I don't think she wants to run. It's a miserable process. Second of all, I don't think people like Michelle Obama that much. A certain group of liberals like Michelle Obama, but I don't think Michelle Obama has that widespread appeal. She doesn't have anywhere near the appeal that her husband had. She's kind of an unlikable figure. Don't forget, Michelle Obama is the one who said the first time she was ever proud of her country was when it elected her husband. Some people like Michelle and they view her as Oprah or Ellen DeGeneres or something. You know, they'll subscribe to the Michelle Obama book club. But I think a lot of people really don't like Michelle Obama. And she's not going to run anyway, so who cares? Gavin Newsom, I think he's really overrated. I don't see Gavin Newsom winning in Michigan. I don't see Gavin Newsom winning in Pennsylvania. He's slick. He's Governor Patrick Bateman. He probably feeds stray cats to ATMs, and he definitely plays very well with the staff at the French Laundry. I don't think he plays that well in Peoria. Way overhyped. Whitmer in Michigan, she's I find very unpleasant female Democrat governor in Michigan. Okay, you say maybe she's got a chance because Michigan is kind of a must-win state for the Democrats, and she obviously wants to be president. So, like, maybe Whitmer does better than Biden against Trump, but I don't think so. Maybe. I doubt it. Who then? Some have floated Josh Shapiro. He's the governor of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is another state that the Democrats really want to win. I don't know. At a time when you've got intifadas marching around the left, at a time when the Democrats quite openly despise Jews, I don't think that a guy named Shapiro is going to do that well as their nominee. When Israel is the wedge issue and you have some pretty blatant anti-Jewish rhetoric on the left, including in the mainstream left, I don't think that's going to work. Plus, the guy has just been elected. He's not ready for prime time. Ain't going to happen. I don't think Josh Shapiro does better than Joe Biden against Trump. Then who? That's the present crop. How about Mayor Pete? Is Mayor Pete going to do it? Give me a break. Tony Blinken, give me a break. The Secretary of State. I don't think so. Who? Okay, now we got to go back. Are they going to run Hillary again? Oh, please, Democrats, run Hillary again. But okay, you're going to say Hillary versus Trump. Trump's going to win it. We already know that because he did. Okay, John Kerry. Let's go back to the previous Democrat loser nominee. John Kerry. I don't think so. I don't think Thurston Howell III on his private jet whining about the sun monster. I don't think he beats Trump. Then you got to go back further. How about Al Gore? St. Al. Is he going to do it? He can brag about inventing the internet? I don't know. That was the last major thing he could brag, or that PowerPoint he did that he won an Oscar for. No, you got. They're going to end up. They're going to end up with Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter, God bless him, the guy is still kicking, is still around. You would have to go back that far to get to a popular Democrat. There are no choices. The Democrats dug their own grave here by straight-facing it and pretending that Biden was not in decline and pretending that his obvious senility was a childhood stutter. And now they're stuck with him. The big problem for the Democrats right now, though, so that's why they can't replace him. They also can't leave him as their nominee. And the reason they can't leave him as their nominee is You can't take this back. You can't take back the New York Times editorial that Biden's unfit to lead. You can't take back the Claire McCaskill, the former Democrat senator, now pundit, going on TV and saying, yeah, this guy's really cooked. This guy is clearly past his sell-by date. You can't take back the entire liberal establishment saying that he is not fit for a second term. Because then if the convention happens and he is their nominee, all those very same people are going to have to go out on TV and say, oh, JK, no, what? Oh, forget about that. I didn't really say that. He's great. To serve his country, Biden should definitely be president again. What are they going to? They're going to stealth edit that in the New York Times? You can't take that back. So now they're in a real quandary. They have no one better to replace him. They've already said they don't have any faith in him as the nominee. And he's got to be the one to decide if he wants to leave, and he doesn't want to leave. There's nothing for them to do. Now, I'm sure there will be a lot more Biden fallout in the coming days. I want to turn to something that no one's talking about. It's an earth-shaking decision out of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has overruled Chevron deference. And if that sounds a little wonky or you're not familiar with that case or that legal term, Chevron deference refers to a principle established in 1984 in a case which is Chevron v. Natural Resources Defense Council. And at issue in the case was, do the executive agencies, do the bureaucrats who ostensibly work under the president, but really they have a ton of independence in part because of this 1984 ruling, who interprets the laws that apply to them? Congress passes some law, but Congress doesn't really get all into the weeds on details. Who gets to interpret what that law means? Who gets to interpret how much power the bureaucrats and the agencies get? Is it the Congress? Well, maybe they haven't been clear in the law. Is it the courts? Maybe. Or is it the agencies themselves? Chevron established the principle that when Congress does not speak clearly to a particular issue, and when an agency's interpretation of the law is at least plausible, then the agency gets to interpret the law itself. And the reason this matters is it means that unelected, largely unaccountable bureaucrats are always going to take as much power for themselves as they possibly can. And the courts were constrained to stop them. The courts really didn't have a lot of teeth to stop them. As long as the reading of the law, whether it's the EPA or whatever alphabet agency you can think of, as long as their reading of the law was even somewhat plausible and Congress was ambiguous, which it always is, they get to do whatever they want. Then this case just came down, 2024 Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo. It doesn't really matter the details of this particular case. What was at issue was Chevron deference, and the court voted to overturn it. So this is something that libertarians have been calling for 40 years. Many conservatives have been calling for a long time. This is the best chance that conservatives have to gut and overhaul the administrative state, sometimes called the deep state. And it happened. Liberals are furious, libertarians are thrilled, conservatives are mostly thrilled, but we have mixed feelings about it because because it is complex. And the courts now, the court has argued that courts have a special skill in interpreting statutes. Bureaucrats don't have any particular skill in interpreting statutes, but the courts do. And so that's why the courts should decide, not these bureaucrats giving themselves more power. However, the courts don't know very much about environmental regulations or any other kind of regulation. They don't really know that much about the functioning of the administrative state. So I kind of understand the arguments from the administrative state. And frankly, if the administrative state were staffed by conservatives, and if conservatives had a foothold in that institution, I would probably be favoring more power to them because every large state in history has some kind of bureaucracy. And we don't actually live in some yeoman republic utopia that the Jeffersonians might be imagining. We live in a global empire with a huge sprawling bureaucracy. In any case, it's an earth-shattering decision from a bold Supreme Court that is taking on huge issues this cycle. No sooner do they make this decision overruling Chevron. this is a decision on the level of Dobbs overruling Roe v. Wade. Maybe not quite there, but pretty close. Definitely comparable. No sooner do they issue that ruling than they decide that Steve Bannon, the former White House chief strategist, is going to jail. The court denied on Friday Steve Bannon's request to stay out of jail pending appeal. So he's almost certainly going to put on an orange jumpsuit. And of course this is the case. First of all, because you've already got Peter Navarro, Trump's other senior White House advisor. He was the trade advisor, who is currently in jail, serving out his sentence for criminal contempt of Congress. So if the Supreme Court said Bannon doesn't have to go to jail, it would be kind of bad optics for Peter Navarro to keep languishing away there. Also because Steve Bannon is relatively small potatoes compared to the court's responsibilities right now. I'm not casting any shade at Steve Bannon. He's a very important right-wing figure, very important to the MAGA movement. But compared to all these other things the court is doing, the court overruling Chevron deference, the court about to rule on immunity. Does President Trump have immunity for actions that he committed as president? To what degree does he have immunity? Are the other Biden prosecutions of Trump even going to move forward? That's a huge decision. We know the court follows the election results. We know the court, especially under John Roberts, is very concerned with seeming to be impartial and seeming to have institutional credibility. Yeah, Bannon's going to jail, and we are just going to gear up for the big question. Does Trump have immunity? Will that prosecution move forward? And there's even another January 6th case, and the court ruled in a way that is going to surprise a lot of people on the left and the right. Before we get to that, first, though, we got to talk about Zap My Debt. Go to zapmydebt.com. Does your debt keep you tossing and turning at night? The unfortunate reality is that our banking system is designed to trap you in debt. These insanely high-interest credit cards and loans make it impossible to pay off your debt. Thankfully, there is a new way out of the debt trap with Zero Debt USA. You've heard me talk about Pivotal Debt Solutions, now known as Zero Debt USA. They have new aggressive strategies to end your debt faster and easier than you thought possible. Zero Debt USA can cut or even eliminate interest. They will help find programs to write off your balances so you owe less, and they can do all of this without bankruptcy and without a loan. Before you do anything, contact Zero Debt USA first at zapmydebt.com. Talk to them for free. Find out how fast they can help you get out of debt. Do not spend another night tossing and turning, worrying about your debt, those annoying phone calls. Just go to zapmydebt.com today. That is Zap, Z-A-P, mydebt.com. The biggest case the court is going to have to consider is this Trump immunity decision. The court is meeting today. This is for the final time this session. So usually the court doesn't continue to meet this late into the year. We're already in July, right? It's June 1st. Because every month is now going to be viewed in relation to June at once because Pride Month is now Pride Year, but also because Juneteenth is the most important holiday on the liberal liturgical calendar. So we're on Juneteenth 1st, but we used to call it July 1st. It's weird that the court's meeting this late. It's probably coming out right now. Regardless, this is the most anticipated decision. Is Trump immune from prosecution for his role on January 6th? Now, either way, the reason that I'm not sweating it and checking my phone while I'm recording this show to see how the court rules is that actually either way, it's very unlikely that Trump would stand trial before the election. The fact that the decision is coming out this late means that either way, it probably won't affect the November election, which would seem to be a pretty clever way to do it because the Supreme Court, neither the liberals nor the conservatives on the court, want to be seen as interfering in the presidential election, rigging, stealing the presidential election, which is the contention that Trump is making. Now, the question of presidential immunity is an interesting one in itself. Should the president be prosecuted for things he does as president? There's got to be some limit, right? There's got to be, like, if the president of either party goes out, shows up to the White House dining hall and just starts shooting his staff members. If the president then, pulls out a bunch of hard drugs and invites a ton of hookers over and a bunch of Mexican gangbangers, from MS-13, and they all have a kind of satanic ritual and then go out and murder more people. Surely the president should be prosecuted then, right? I think we all agree. So there's got to be some, it's kind of a silly example, but it's an important example because it just shows you there's got to be some limit. So how much leeway should the president have? And it would seem to me that the president should have a lot of leeway. Okay, I recognize there's got to be some limit to what the president can do in office, but there's got to be a lot of leeway. Otherwise, we're going to become even more of what Joe Biden's turned us into, which is a banana republic, a tin pot dictatorship where the cost of serving as president in a way that's dignified and just is that you spend the rest of your life in prison. I think the court knows that too. That would be a major upending of our political order if we start jailing former presidents. Now, we're already getting good signs on these questions because the Supreme Court, again, star of the show here, has just ruled in favor of a January 6th demonstrator. And before the Libs get their garments in a twist, the decision was 6-3, and it wasn't on ideological lines. Supreme Court was asked to rule on a former police officer who shows up on January 6th. He's a J6 demonstrator and is charged with obstruction. You probably heard a lot of these. Obstructing an official congressional proceeding, which actually Jamal Bowman, the Democrat congressman who just got voted out by his constituents, he did a much more egregious version of that crime when he pulled that fire alarm in Congress, but somehow he never gets prosecuted for it. The question was, do the January 6th people get prosecuted for obstruction? And the charge comes from part of a law enacted in 2002 as part of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Sarbanes-Oxley Act was passed after the Enron scandal. The purpose of this provision of the law was to prevent evidence tampering, basically. It was in response to the Enron stuff. It targets anyone who, quote, obstructs, influences, or impedes any official proceeding or attempts to do so. The majority of the court said, no, that's way too broad a reading. It's really about financial bookkeeping and fraud and evidence tampering. No, you're not going to charge this guy for obstruction here. And the justices who said that were Roberts, Chief Justice, kind of conservative; Thomas, very conservative; Alito, very conservative; Gorsuch, pretty conservative, even though he wrote transgenderism into U.S. civil rights law; Kavanaugh, pretty conservative; and Ketanji Jackson, super lib on the court. The dissent, the people who wanted to go after this January 6th guy, Sotomayor, lib; Kagan, lib; Amy Coney Barrett, supposed to be pretty conservative. It's good news. Whenever the Supreme Court decisions are not purely on ideological lines, it looks good for the court and helps them maintain institutional credibility, even though I don't really see why. The other thing you have to remember about the court is that there's a broad consensus on a lot of issues that come before the court. It's just the really, really contentious ones, the really, really political ones, party political ones that get all the attention, like a Dobbs decision or like the Obamacare decision or like Chevron for that matter. But a lot of the procedural, more in-the-weeds statutory questions, there's often a lot of consensus. The Libs are attacking the court right now in particular because they're looking down the pike and they see that this could be a contested presidential election if the cadaver that they've ostensibly nominated can even make it to November. There could be a real contested election, and the court could rule, because it's a largely conservative court, could rule in favor of Trump. And so the Libs are preemptively attempting to tarnish the credibility of the court. And they've been up to this for quite some time because the court provides a check on a lot of their power grabs through the bureaucracy in particular and through the other branches of government. So they've been going after the courts for a while. They never forgave the court for giving the election to George Bush in 2000, even though that was the obvious decision to be made. So regardless, this is filtered into the public consciousness. And most Americans, according to an AP survey, believe that the Supreme Court puts ideology over impartiality. The Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research found that 7 in 10 Americans think the court's justices are influenced by ideology, while only 3 in 10 Americans think that the justices are more likely to provide an independent check on other branches of government by being fair or impartial. What this survey reveals is nothing about the Supreme Court. What this reveals is the ignorance of the survey respondents about the words ideology and impartiality. They don't really know what these words mean. It is not the job of a Supreme Court justice to not have opinions on anything. It is not the job of a Supreme Court justice to not have an ideology, or at the very least, to not be influenced by ideas and a particular view of the world. It is a job requirement that justices have a clear vision of the world. It is a job requirement that justices have opinions about things. It is a job requirement that judges can discern right from wrong. That's actually their job. Impartiality here is being confused with neutrality. The judges have to be impartial in as much as they have to be indifferent to private interests. They shouldn't be coming down with decisions that just serve their private, irrational wills. But they can't be you can't. To be a judge, you have to have good judgment. You have to prefer good to bad and right to wrong and truth to falsehood. You can't be impartial when it comes to truth and falsehood and right and wrong. The two aren't opposed. Impartiality, and here it says ideology. I prefer, a view of the world. Those two aren't opposed. They actually go together. You can't properly be impartial in matters of law without having a well-formed understanding of justice. But this is how the libs work. I mean, their political strategies are so clever. By confusing the American people about what a judge is even supposed to do, they are able to tarnish the credibility of the court, specifically the conservative members, justices on the Supreme Court. Now, speaking of ideology, shocking survey has just come out, shocking new study, shocking precisely to no one who has a modicum of common sense, shows that diversity, DEI, is bad for corporate profits. Wow, gee, you don't say. Now, why is this even a headline? It's a headline because back in 2015, McKinsey, probably the most famous consulting firm in the world, came out with a study, and they claimed that they found a link between profits and the racial and gender diversity of executives. McKinsey came out, big lib establishment corporate consulting firm, and they said, diversity is good for your bottom line. Get more women, get more blacks, and get even more ethnically and racially specific and exotic in the boardroom. You're going to make more money. And the problem with that study is it's completely bogus. Academics have tried to repeat the McKinsey study, and they're not able to replicate those results. A number of academics have found there is no link whatsoever between profitability and executive diversity. They haven't found that having more women and black people and Hispanics or whatever diminishes profits. They haven't found that either. They've just found there's no link between diversity and corporate profits. The methodology of the McKinsey studies is very silly and ridiculous. Just to give one example that's been pretty widely reported on, McKinsey originally had linked profits over several years at a company with diversity at the end of that period that they were looking at. And they concluded from that having, in 2024, having a diverse boardroom is why the company was profitable from 2015 to 2024, for example. But you said, well, hold on, they only had the diverse boardroom at the very end of that period. So McKinsey is concluding that diversity causes profits. You might be able to say, actually, profits cause diversity. The more profitable a company becomes, the more mainstream and establishment a company becomes, the more pressure it feels to implement DEI policies and invite tokens into the boardroom strictly for their skin color or their sex. But the other reason that it's so obvious that diversity, capital D, does not lead to profits is that unless black people are uniformly more productive than white people and are being kept out of jobs by some nefarious hidden force that can only be rectified by DEI policies, this conclusion couldn't possibly be true. Because without the DEI policies, ostensibly, the corporations are just hiring the people that they think are best for the job. And maybe that means it's only white guys. And maybe it means it's 7 white guys and 3 black guys. And maybe it means it's 9 men and 1 woman. And maybe it means it's 3 normal people and 7 like LGBT, pansexual, whatever. I don't know. But regardless, without the mandate saying you need X number of black people and X number of women and X number of this, the corporation is just trying to make money. It's just trying to make money for its shareholders. And the main color that corporations care about is not black or white or yellow or red, but green. They want the money. So the very fact that such a policy would be pushed by government, such a type of DEI policy would be pushed by agitative NGOs and lawyers and all the rest of it, is specifically because corporations are simply focusing on profits. So that the two are distinct. No surprise then that the policies do not increase those profits. No one. It's one of those examples where it's the IQ bell curve. The drooling idiot at the lowest end of the IQ bell curve knows that, yeah, of course, implementing these diversity quotas don't actually increase profits. Then the people in the middle of the IQ curve are trying to say, no, but actually, see, here's why, because at McKinsey, we found the blah, 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 blah. And they have this bogus methodology. And then at the top of the IQ bell curve, you say, yeah, duh. If your goal is to make money, then you're going to make more money. And if your goal is to prioritize all these other ideological fashions, then you're going to get more of that, but that might come at the cost of money. For the 4th of July, DailyWire Plus is not only celebrating freedom, we are giving a year of it away. Buy 1 year of DailyWire Plus, get 1 year for free. That means you get an additional year of The Michael Knowles Show, uncensored, unfiltered, and 100% ad-free. You also gain access to our extensive library of compelling films, groundbreaking documentaries, hard-hitting series, and in-depth investigative journalism that you won't find anywhere else. Purchase 1 year of DailyWire Plus. We will give you another year at no additional cost. This deal will not last long. Visit DailyWirePlus.com now. Secure your 2 years of DailyWire Plus for the price of 1, and then return to your 4th of July festivities. Join us today as we build the future and fight the libs. My favorite comment on Friday is from, and again, I don't really look at the names, so the fact that this guy keeps popping up, it's just because his comments are that good. The Drummers Workshop, Norm's Music, who says, Trump did well at the debate. He stayed composed while Joe decomposed. That is true. That's a very precise way to put it. Now, speaking of bad workplace regulations, pull over your car, sit down if you're standing up. A gay actor has been arrested on charges of child pornography. Stop the press. Now, speaking of these kinds of ethics, horrific story out of the UK. It's going viral now. A story is from a few years ago, but the Right to Life UK just posted this story of a mother who has a child with Down syndrome who was encouraged to have an abortion full term.
And even being offered termination at full term on the Friday and giving birth to him on the Sunday.
What was said to you?
She's turned around and said to me, you do know we still terminate babies with Down syndrome at 38 weeks.
And what did you say?
I said, well, I'll pretend I didn't hear that. Because I was completely blown away, shocked and disgusted. And here he is, Hector, and he is absolutely beautiful. Yes, he's got a modelling career. He's beautiful. He is, and so are you. Yeah. And and he's got a lot of people that love him. Wave, Hector. Give us a wave. I'll blow us a kiss. He's got a great fan club.
Really cute kid and everything. Really horrifying story. But it shouldn't surprise us. Trump did a great job in the debate pointing this out. When Biden said, nobody wants late-term abortion. Trump said, yes, you do. You're trying to protect abortion up until the moment of birth in some cases. And when you look at the former Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, he said he would support abortion after birth. If the mom wants to kill the kid, well, we'll put him on the table and we'll just kind of see, we'll make a decision then, have a discussion. Andy Cuomo, when he was governor of New York, Democrat, he changed the abortion law so that if a criminal murders a pregnant woman, it would no longer be double homicide, and so that a woman could kill a baby up until the moment of birth. And then he lit up the World Trade Center in pink to celebrate that. The Democrats want to do that. That baby was delivered at 38 weeks. And the doctor said, we still will abort him. 3 days later, the baby is born. My recent child, my third son, was born at 39 weeks. I very recently held a baby that was pretty much the exact same age as a baby that these UK doctors wanted to murder. And we have this idea that when the baby's in the womb, it's not really a baby. But then the minute the baby comes out of the womb, you say, oh my goodness, that's a baby. That's so weird that thing was just in your belly. We have this idea that the baby in the womb is, is like kind of looks weird or is translucent or something. I don't know. It just doesn't look like a human. No, the baby that they offered to kill had skin that just looks just like yours and my skin, had features, body features that look just like your and my body features, had moral dignity and worth just like ours, probably better than a lot of the people who are trying to kill him. The doctors in the UK wouldn't say 3 days later when the woman gave birth, okay, do you want us to behead him now? Do you want us to poison him or strangle him or just dash his brains out on the rocks? Do you want us to do that? They wouldn't do that because the horror of what they're proposing to do and what they regularly do is so obvious. But 3 days prior, they would do it. And they would do it because the kid is a little bit slow. He's a bit simple. He has Down syndrome. Because of that, because he has an intellectual impairment, they would say, what is the exact equivalent of you take a newborn baby, dash his brains out on the rocks like you're living in ancient Sparta or something. That's really happening. And Biden can deny it. But Trump, for all the controversy he's generated on some of his nuanced views on these kinds of issues and his prudent or imprudent decisions to try to get elected. This is a guy who is pretty clearly on the right side of the life issue, okay? And if you think this is just going on in the UK, you're crazy. This stuff is being promoted by the sitting president of the United States, whether he admits it or not, whether he's even aware of it or not. The rest of the show continues now. It's Music Monday. You don't want to miss it. Become a member. Use code Knowles, Canada WLAS at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.